Give us any chance, we'll take it. Read us any rule, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true.
Welcome to Night After Night, a podcast about 8 seasons in a row. I'm Lisa Fernandes, and
I am Christopher Jayawardena.
And we're bringing you the final episode of Season 1 of Laverne and Shirley. This is Mother Knows Worst. Written by Arthur Silver and directed by Alan Meyerson.
Woo!
And I'm sure you've got some facts about them both, Chris.
Well, I mean, in Meyerson's case, I don't know how much more I can say. I mean, this guy was definitely kind of like one of the main directors of the show. He did quite a few episodes, at least 4, I think, 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And continued working with it for quite a few years of the show. In the case of Arthur Silver, I mean, again, as a person that, worked on different pieces of, television fiction, the main thing I just keep remembering Arthur Silver for, and I'm sure that he would be a little frustrated to know this is the case, is that I know that he was responsible for some of the characters in the Missing in Action Chuck Norris films, and I'm never going to let him live that down. So that's the main thing. The main thing I can say. But Meyerson is through this year of the season has shown to be a very good director of multiple episodes. And Arthur's writing is quite solid. And it's
yes.
And this is definitely, in my opinion, as we're going to get into it, is one of their better. I think one of the really good collaborations and one of the better episodes of the season.
Yeah. This is pretty high for me. This is a pretty good one, but we'll get there after. We'll get there after we discuss it. The episode, to sum it up, is about Shirley's mom, Lillian, calling herself Barb due to her self-detected resemblance to Barbara Rush, drops Shirley a telegram to inform her she'll be arriving the next day. Shirley is immediately nervous and becomes stressed out, unable to deal with her mother's criticism. When Barb shows up a day early, the clairvoyant Mrs. Havenworth lets her into the girls' apartment early, and Shirley must grapple with her mother's disappointment in her choices and even Laverne's. When Barb rejects Shirley's plan to go with My Fair Lady and subsequently expresses her disappointment in the classic company Shirley's keeping, Laverne's the one who has to speak up for her best friend. What do you think about this one?
What I like in this one is you have a fantastic performance from the actor playing as Lily Feeney, Barb, and I do not have the actor's name on hand, unfortunately.
Pat Carroll.
Thank you. My apologies. This was one of those, had to rush to cram some of the information for these notes. But the comedy's really strong. The point of it is very poignant and realistic, and something I think is very relatable to a lot of people because of, just everybody has their complicated relationship with their parents. And yet it also still maintains an incredible amount of wonderful comedy. This is probably some of the most like kind of 40s screwball, 40s, 50s screwball comedy lines and kind of one-liners in this. And it's a very solid episode. I generally overall enjoyed pretty much all of this, especially because, just to make one point, we'll kind of get to this more in depth later, but I really like how it concludes.
Yes.
It's a case of progress is made, but not everything is changed.
Yeah.
And so that leaves the level of uncertainty, which I thought was really cool.
Yes. There's a lot of beautiful stuff here. There's a lot of intergenerational conflict, and you can see where Barb's coming from. She does not want Shirley to make the mistake that she did in marrying a sailor and basically, ruining her life in a way. And we'll meet Jack later, her husband, Shirley's father, somewhere around season 2 or season 3. No, it's about either 3 or 4. And he is a charming, irresponsible spendthrift type, thus why she's sitting there trying to drum Mary Doctor, professional man, college man, into Shirley's head.
Mm-hmm.
Because if she drifts off to this charming dude, she can just see history repeating itself over and over again. Interestingly, she does not spend a lot of time with Carmine. And even though Carmine's kind of a moot point, you have to find it interesting that she kind of has no real commentary about Shirley's ex here, which I thought was worth pointing out.
That was interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. I do feel part of that comes in one of the jokes, I think, or I guess one of the main key points of this episode is understanding that Barb is, you know, rather fittingly, she's throwing barbs at everyone. You know, she's giving these, you know, little digs, and it's more in the tone sometimes than just the words. It becomes a case of like a certain bitterness. And again, like as I mentioned before about Shirley, like there's a sense of trying to control her environment. And Shirley, I think, tries to control it through controlling the narrative. And Lily does it, her mother does it through kind of manipulating others in sort of the takedowns that she does of other people.
Yeah, exactly. Shirley's also technically the child of Ursula. This Pat Carroll's voiced Ursula in Disney's The Little Mermaid.
Yep, which, that information was fantastic. That's why I felt horrible not having the that information. All I wrote down in my notes is Lily Feeney equal Ursula? Oh, this explains a lot. And and then so I didn't write down the actress name, which Pat Carroll, I'm so sorry. I love your work.
Your work is amazing. You're a queen.
You're a legend. You're a legend. But anywho, as you were pointing out, I mean, that was what I really saw right away when we watched this episode, is how much you understand of where Shirley comes from here, and the goals, the fears, the way she's reacting to them. It's one of the episodes that I find incredibly textured despite everything. And it makes you wonder what like rehearsals and the discussion during rehearsals. Because when admittedly, I'm, you know, not a officially trained director, you know, I mean, I direct, but I don't have the training, you know, to do it. I've self-taught I'm, you know, usually I try to work with those actors about motivation and background and do a lot of backstory work with the actors about their characters. And I'm curious how that developed on this episode.
Yeah. I'm curious about how they put everything together from one end of the episode to the other end, because once again we got to bring up the writer conflict. I don't know how much communication was going on. I know there is a specific incident that Gary Marshall talks about in his autobiography when there would constantly be calls from the director up to the writer's room, and from the writer's room down to the floor, because there would be constant conflicts between what everybody wanted. But that's one of those questions I kind of want to like interrogate the directors on the show. In a way, find out how they felt. At least one of the guys, one of the producers, I think it was Lowell. I gotta look that up. Have to look that up. I'm gonna bring this up when his episode comes up, and it will. He described directing the show as losing his virginity to a mean lady.
Oh my God, that's a truly horrifically, probably accurate way to put it. Because I mean, I mean, when you make a movie, you know, when you direct something, you know, when you produce something, and you have all these different conflicting pieces, sometimes dealing with it and just the stresses of it. Yeah, there is a, you know, saying it's a harsh mistress is one way of putting it, but that often means that you sort of got yourself into it. But like, it's something you really want to do. You want to lose that virginity, but then losing it to someone or with someone that is not kind. Yeah. There's a story or two I can probably relate on that about.
Yeah. Everybody's got their own mean lady in their past, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah.
But, back to the base conflict here. I love what Shirley says at the end of the episode where she's confronting her mom. And she says, "You love me, but you don't like me."
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to that in like a lot of ways. My own personal like family conflicts. I've had my father say that to me before. I love you, but I don't like you at the moment. And, you know, I don't like you, period. I've heard that said, and it's the way the show deals with that. You can compare the way Shirley and Barb fight with one another, or the way Shirley just, you know, totally can't even really, like, articulate herself in the conflict. You can compare this to the way Laverne and Frank fight, really, really loudly, with no fear. Except the fear that they will punch each other out. And you compare that to the way Squiggy fights with his mom, which is also very, very verbal, but eventually he comes under her heel in a way. And you really don't get that with Lenny, because you don't find out what his dynamic's like with his dad. And you don't find out, you hear stories about his grandfather, you hear stories about his dad, but you don't get to see them together. his family life is bigger than Squiggy's in a lot of ways.
Well, he is the lone wolf after all.
Yeah, he wants to be. We all know he's not. He wants to be desperately, but yet the way each of them interacts with their family is another wonderful facet of each of their personalities, and it shows who's fiery and unafraid, shows who's softer and quieter, and how each of them deals with stress, especially stress put on them by the people closest to them. So that was the point I was searching for there.
Mm.
And in the end, what solves the problem? Sisterhood.
Yeah.
Sisterhood solves the problem. Laverne comes up, steps into the plate, and basically kicks Barb in the butt and says, hey, I'm going to make sure she's not going to be a bimbo.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to look out for her.
Mm-hmm.
Stop judging her. Stop judging what's going on. If you don't like her and love her, I like her and love her.
Right.
So yeah, that's beautiful in its own way.
It is. Yeah, it's the Barb's motivation is love, but it's a love that's so demanding that it becomes this suffocation. Yes. And when you find you have to step out, at least, in my experiences for the people I know and in some of my own personal experiences with family, is that it's like when you step out into your own independence, there's that sense of, you still have like the bits of programming that are still tumbling around your head. Even when you're aware that they're there, you're still struggling with them like all the time. And it feels like because Barb wants better for her daughter, but she's so angry and so bitter that the anger and bitterness becomes almost like this, incidentally becomes like a weapon for her trying to process and deal with her own issues that then gets taken out on her daughter. And yeah, as you're saying, like the solution is the sisterhood, is that, Laverne is the person that's going to be there for Shirley, is going to comfort her when she needs, when she really needs it, be demanding of her and encouraging, or sometimes even saying, you're wrong doing that, Shirl, don't do that, to try to keep her on the right path. It's kind of, that's another thing I really loved about this episode is like, there's so many of the reminders of these characters still being like kids, there's these different ways like that they interact, and especially the way like the boys talk to Barb as well, which we'll get into soon. But like there is because it was kind of cool also is that Shirley gets to kind of have that emotional discussion with her mom where they're starting to become equals. And that to me was really significant. That was a significant part of the episode. That's why I really, really like this one.
Yeah, there's a beautiful way of putting how these people are kind of in that gap between being fully grown adults and being teenagers. The way Laverne and Shirley still rely on Frank is interesting in that respect. And the way they rely on each other is entirely different. That's not an entirely mature bond either. And it's interesting how Laverne vows she's going to protect Shirley. Shirley basically considers it a mission to protect Laverne. And it's beautiful how that's articulated, because she's there too. She's working there too. She's trying to protect her too. I love that little twist there. But okay, you mentioned how the boys are used in this episode. The boys are used perfectly in this episode. This is probably the best way to drop them into a plot and not have the plot center entirely around them, because it's kind of all the fun just watching them re-encounter Barb for the first time probably since they were kids, or at least since they were teenagers. And then he goes, "Did you used to be Shirley's mother?" That's everything. Yeah,
that line kills me. Love it so much.
He tried to shave their dog, and then when she asks, she calls them Iggly and Squiggly, and she asks them, do they live upstairs? And they live upstairs, and they consider themselves the girls' guardian angels and their bosom buddies. This is the first time Lenny bites his palm, by the way. That becomes a master gesture for the character. It comes back again and again and again and again and again. As an expression of joy is what he calls it when he's questioned about it in season 5. That's the first time he does it.
So it's his way to internally scream.
Yes. When you see something good, this is the way you put it. When you see something good, you have to express yourself. That's what you do.
Oh boy.
Something that looks good. And that's why he does when he looks at girls. So he does when he looks at Laverne.
Goodness gracious, that's right. Yeah, it's great to see how the boys get used in this episode. They're able to sort of, it's the timing of it, especially, you know, the idea of, you know, Barb being let in by Mrs. Havenworst, and who also, by the way, I felt was used amazingly well with the whole mystic psychic thing in this, which I'm so bummed you were mentioning. This is her last appearance in the show. This is her
last appearance, yeah.
But yeah, with the boys, I love that there's a oblivious, God. A very unhelpful, clumsy obliviousness to their, or innocent clumsiness to the way they come in, and they essentially create the situation that makes Barb even further concerned and makes her further agitated. You know, so before Shirley shows up, you know, like she's already kind of on edge. I mean, the fact they even come in, it's like, yeah, we're just here to get groceries, and they start, you know, stealing fruit out of the fridge and, you know, everything they need make sure they have everything they need for the stew. No, and God, the way Squiggy holds the eggs under his armpit made me like panic. Like, no, the Squig, Andy, stop that. I mean, that's going to give your armpit salmonella, and then your pit hair will be fighting for its life. I mean, what the hell are you doing, man? And
just see how much body hair he has. Yeah.
Oh God, and but yeah, it's fantastic, and I'm trying to remember, that's their only major appearance in the episode, right? Is just at that one.
No, they pop up in the tag scene.
That's right.
They pop up in the tag scene, which is really, really funny. Really, really funny. I love. You mentioned them making her even more concerned, which can be summed up in the single line: "It's okay, they're never naked."
That's it.
You know they're walking in hoping they'll be naked someday.
Right.
Someday. I was gonna mention that the future in the Flash to the Future, which is actually a Flash to the Past, in the flashback episode, Squiggy goes to Shirley and goes, "You was my last chance at a short woman." It says it all. Says it all about the relationship.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, okay. So we can. And that's just like, and this is a theme that accidentally comes back, like when Barb asks Laverne, "What do you do for a good time?" And she goes, "At home or in a car."
Oh God, yeah, I love that. I have that in my notes. I love that line, and especially like how nonchalant she says it, which is another one of those turning points of like, to Laverne, as horrifying as this really should be to her, she's also thinking, you know, we're adults. Barb is an adult. We're going to talk the way adults do, you know, in a way that, and to her, that's normal. It's a very normalized way of looking at it.
Yeah. To Barb, she is still Dimples, basically. Her daughter is Dimples. She's still, like, eternally 6.
Yep.
And Shirley can be that innocent. She can be that innocent. She's still got her stuffed animal. She thinks that, you know, her morning grooming routine is what was driving all those guys crazy and driving them to her door. And that was quite it. Back in What's Upon a Rumor. But she also is much more grown up than her mother thinks she is. Much more grown up.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Yeah. And I like how it plays back and forth with those aspects, you know, where it's because you get to see those elements and see how they're done, and the performances. I mean, Pat Carroll is amazingly electrifying in this episode. Yes. And so they're able to take this dialogue that's already, you know, got the subtext there in the way it's written, and they milk it for everything it's worth. That's why, you know, I was pointing out, I mean, Meyerson has proven himself by this point in the show to really be one of the strongest directors they have on staff, because God, there's so much that is able to be, you know, they're either allowing the actors to find the subtext and go for it, or working with them to find it and develop it further in the performances. You know, she feels that she needs to control her daughter's life because, you know, and to manipulate her through these cutting jabs and things like that, because this is my baby. My baby needs to have the best. She needs to have everything that I could never give her because of her own insecurities as a mother, you know, feeling like, you know, I didn't give you the life that I wanted to give you. And so, you know, again, instead of it coming from a self-destructive or a sad or even a encouraging, hopeful perspective, it comes in a very destructive fashion.
Exactly. She's trying so hard to help her daughter, she's harming her, and that's just a parental issue that hundreds and hundreds of people have lived through in real life, and it just beautifully captured in fiction here.
I would be very curious if those of us who listen to our show, if they could, you know, just show of hands, you know, because I have the sneaking suspicion it's so much more, you know, than in varying degrees, obviously, you know.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and it's a and I felt that the way this handled it, especially for a sitcom of this time, did it very well and realistically. I mean, even down to like, you know, the comedic beats, like, you know, when Shirley goes into the bedroom and screams into the pillow. I mean, that's amazing. You know,
yeah.
Like, I've been there.
yeah. We've all lived that.
It's like I love you, but God, you make me want to scream.
Yeah, I could punch you just once.
Oh God. Yeah.
This is one of those episodes where you'll hit home just right. Just right for a lot of people. It's a really strong way to end the season. It's interesting how when we see into season 2, it becomes a lot more broad. It becomes more familiar to the kind of show that people think of when they think about the show. But that tenderness does not go away. But that character stuff does not go away. It's still there, and this is kind of an interesting episode that is a transition between those themes.
Interesting.
Sorry, go ahead. It's like dumping whipped cream on Oreos. It's the blunder, but it's a good blunder. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. They kind of they fall into this point. I mean, what I was going to also point out as I was looking at my notes, because I realized I didn't get a chance to mention how much I love the initial joke at the first start of the episode where they're trying to get into the house, into the apartment, and them hanging on the door, you know, or Laverne hanging on the door.
Yes.
And and all that business, because it's such a wonderfully goofy, again, very vaudevillian or kind of classic stage comedy sort of joke, very physical comedy joke. And then the rest of the episode kind of gets increasingly more and more kind of psychological and dramatic, while still maintaining, you know, great jokes and bits of humor and things like that, you know, and it feels like here it's treating it more naturally, or it's allowing it to be natural and to be real, or trying to infuse a reality into it. It doesn't feel like it's forcing anything. Because I think what happens when we consider, oh, it's being taken more seriously, it's taken more dramatically and things like that. And I'm unfortunately another purveyor of this line of thought when it comes to my own private fandom interests within the Resident Evil community, that, you know, that it's projected as a certain way. And here it does get a little more heavy, but it's still a lot of fun. There's still laughs. I mean, you still get really good laughs throughout the entire episode. Yeah,
exactly. The way the show is so good at blending comedy and drama for the most part. It's really, really, really good in those episodes where we're not just going full slapstick and bottle feeding bears and nuns with pickles.
Yeah, God. Pickles again, God.
Pickles.
You know, by the end of the series, as we go through it, I have a feeling that nuns with pickles is going to end up being my safe word as a sign of like, alarm, get away from me. That's what I said it. I'm not taking it back.
Season 8. Season 8. Yeah, while you were talking about the very first scene, this episode is cute, even the pre-credits scene. There's a scene where the girls are walking the apartment building, and Laverne jumps in while these two girls are trying to jump rope. And then she kind of fails to jump rope, and it's and she kind of teases the kids about it. It's really good. It's really cute. It's one of those tiny cute details.
Yeah,
I really like that little.
It's things. Yeah, exactly. It's things like that that make it such a really, I think, good episode. It's entertaining. It's satisfying throughout, and you know, it's weird to even say that, but given how it can, you know, as I said, from a matter perspective, how it concludes. It's able to have those elements that are sweet and funny, and yeah, like, you know, it's like, oh, that's cute, or, you know, wow, that's hilarious. Yes. And even like, especially like, you know, with speaking of the door gag, is, you know, it's like, don't force it, pull it. And then seeing Barb do the same thing, with the landlady is like, it's a wonderful setup of, that's Shirley's mom,
Yeah.
within 3 seconds, for sure. And
yeah. A lot of beautiful points it makes about how it doesn't matter what the expectations upon you are, as long as you've got someone who likes you exactly as you are.
Yeah.
Likes the person you are as a human being. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the first time we hear the name Terry Buttafuoco in this series. She becomes a recurring character. She is, in fact, played by Judy Pioli, who wrote a lot of amazing episodes for the show. She wrote Lenny's Crush, which is currently the second most popular episode on IMDb in the rankings. And she is a lot of fun. A lot of fun when she surfaces actually as a physical character. But this is the first time she's mentioned because Laverne offers to go stay with her. And she's Deb. And Angora Deb. The Angora Debs will become a bigger deal in season 2. And they shared childhood together. She's a very interesting character. So keep this little throwaway line in mind. It's going to resurface in season 2.
Cool. I'm looking forward to that. I actually do have a note of the name Terry Buttafuoco.
Yes.
Buttafuoco.
They keep adding and subtracting C's to her name throughout their various appearances. By the way, which there's 2 C's and 1 C, 1 C, 2 C's. And it's one of those little errors. It's like Lenny being Lenny Kowalski for like 2 episodes, and then he's not again. Billy.
Yeah, it's You got to wonder who was asleep at the wheel in that department, or if it was like some intern was having to type up the credits to send to the the post team.
I'm worried. I wonder if it's that, or if he was originally his name, or it was during the early routines, and that's what ended up becoming his name for a little while, and they changed it because of that rule that they had with networks back then. You had to look through the phone book if anybody had that similar name, couldn't use it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And my understanding is even today, what they call errors and omissions, or E&O, when they handle that insurance for even independent films, you often want to get things checked out early when you're developing the movie. I know this because I've had workshops that have discussed this. You sometimes need to change character names. In Shaun of the Dead, his character name is supposed to be Sean Riley. And they never mention it by name and had to cut references to it because there was a real Sean Riley that lived in London and said, I don't want to be associated with this. So they had to go through that process.
I didn't know that. I just remember it happening over and over and over again. The Golden Girls, you had to pitch your episode. When you pitch your episode to standard practices for NBC, they deliberately would search for this person in the Miami area. And if anybody had that same name in the Miami area, you couldn't use the name.
Wow.
Because they would get bombarded by calls from people looking them up in the yellow pages back then.
It's kind of like, and my understanding is that's phone numbers in movies and TV shows is kind of the same way. It's why they have the 555, and it's why they have to when they do use real numbers, and occasionally they do, because I can't remember what movie it was, but there was the director's old phone number is actually in the movie. It was the number he had when he wrote the script, and it's one of those phone I don't know what the phone companies do with that number now. So yeah,
hopefully nothing. It's one of those numbers that gets recycled forever.
Right.
Yeah, that's why that exists. So that's why that rule exists. Just for a long time before that, but that's the example I think of when I think of them having to do that, having to rename characters. Yeah, this episode has one of the best tag scenes in the season, because you hear during the episode that Shirley got tickets for her mother and for herself and Laverne to go see My Fair Lady. And because Barb doesn't want to go out, Frank ran all over town trying to get these tickets for her. Frank's stuck with the tickets. Frank takes Lenny and Squiggy to My Fair Lady.
That is still... I got so wrapped up in the Barb stuff that I totally forgot. That's one of my favorite subplots in this first season.
Do you know how much money I would pay to see an episode of the 3 of them going to My Fair Lady? So much. So much.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that would be... That would be something if that was like it's discovered, deleted scene and put on a new box set. Just buy the new box set.
Yeah.
Just for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just 2 minutes of them reacting to like, see them at the start of the show, at the intermission, and at the conclusion where they're coming out singing along to it, dancing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. And the two of them come tangling right into the room, singing along. And then the two of them say in absolute trade for getting to go to the play, they're going to do her a solid and drive her to the airport. And Jess and Squiggy's lap.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. Yeah. And what is it? Squiggy says, and you'll have the distinct pleasure of getting to sit in my lap or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And she says, and then the girls have apparently been through this before and say that the choice is to either drive or sit there in his lap. She goes, I'll drive.
Yeah, you'll drive. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that.
I'll drive. And then on the way out the door, Shirley tries to correct her and says, it's Lenny and Squiggy. Iggly and Squiggy, I don't care. They drive me crazy. It's great.
That's so good. Yeah, so now Barb does not come back through the rest of the show, correct?
No, she does not.
Okay. So what is your lasting impression as to how this story concludes with the sense of like, yeah, progress is made, that Barb listens, but that the relationship is still kind of is where it is. It's just that they've kind of learned to maybe reel it in a bit. How do you feel about that?
Overall, it adds Shirley's character. It explains why she is who she is, explains how she is who she is. But in the end, the way her story arc ends, and she's the only character with an actual completed story arc in the series except for Carmine. Well, Carmine's just left open-ended. I guess Frank kind of has one, but she is the only one who, has this kind of closed-ended story arc. I would rather her have learned that what her mother's values have been telling her for years and years and years wasn't what she wanted out of life. That's my thought. I coming in here with lots of foresight. Lots of foresight. Lots of foresight. That's all I gotta say. But yeah, that's my opinion. That is my opinion.
Yeah, I hear you.
What do you think?
Yeah. To me, it's just, I think, just kind of, at least hearing from what you're saying about the where it goes, and I know like off air you and I have discussed Shirley's direction and stuff a lot, and because Shirley as a character was someone that I was curious to see how that was gonna grow. So I have even though I latch on to Laverne and Lenny and Squiggy and Frank to an extent more. With Shirley, I find interesting is. It's like I'm of two minds, and that's a phrase I've been using a lot lately to describe some of my feelings about things, which is that it's a bummer that it doesn't kind of get to have like an extra note or a payoff to the setup that's that kind of is unintentionally put here. Because my note here that talks about the conclusion is that it comes from kind of both directions. They have their own separate points, because Shirley has to have the choice of where she's going to go. But at the same time, given where she is, Barb is kind of correct in the sense that maybe ambition isn't a bad thing. It's the way that she's encouraging her, I think, is incredibly. It's coming. It's sort of like the motivation for it is a love, but it's paradoxically coming out very hurtful, very forceful. And that's kind of the tragedy of their relationship. That, Shirley doesn't feel that she'll ever be enough for her mom, but her mom does, despite that, having imposed that feeling, still loves her daughter anyway. And even though she is disappointed, she still loves her, and still there's sort of like, there's worse places she could be and worse places things could go. And it is unfortunate to not have that development past that point, at least from what you're saying and what, and also my own expectations for it as a sitcom series.
Yeah.
I would love to see that paid off, even just the simple tragedy, even like Barb having died suddenly, you know, not wishing anything, you know, bad against the Pat Carroll character, but dramatically speaking, as a writer, I would love to see something like that, either something like that or something that does help create a bit of a paradigm shift. Her getting sick, her going through a very nasty marriage, for instance. Ending up with somebody who's either a bum or he's rich, or he's got the all this prestige and he's abusive, and having to try to get out, and having Shirley having to kind of rescue her, and that changing the dynamic of their relationship, because Shirley is clear-headed and calm through a horrible situation. This is me talking as the drama noir horror author, but I like, though. So I guess what I mean is, like, without that payoff, it gets kind of frustrating to see that they don't have as much resolution, and that it kind of sets up something that's not paid off. However, I mean, as a one-off episode, I do appreciate the realism of the change and shift being, if it was going to happen for real, that their relationship would change, that Lily, Barb, Mrs. Feeney's, or I guess, Ms. Feeney's behavior towards Shirley would change, that it's gradual. This is a landmark moment, but it's not the end, and it's not the end of that discussion. So it's so that's how kind of where I come at it from. So that's why I wanted to bring that up and ask what your feelings were. Just I felt my feelings were kind of complicated about it. But it is satisfying in that way, to me at least, that it has, I guess I appreciate that it seems as if unintentionally they showed themselves unafraid to leave that little taste of ambiguity, which all life seems to have.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the this will continue placeholder. Because she doesn't ever show up again, you do not get that full closure. It just, It is what it is. It's going to stay what it is. Well, my big let's put a button on this episode. Speaking of, what'd you think? Would you rank it?
6.5. I think 6.5, maybe close to a 7, just for Pat Carroll. Her performance is fantastic, and she's such a live wire as an actor. The comedy bits are great. I mean, I agree. The My Fair Lady subplot is delicious. Is a tasty treat of a morsel. It's like getting that perfect little mint cookie at the end of a meal, where it lands. And it is. I mean, obviously, this is from personal ranking thing. Have to take a bit of a point off just because of the amount that in ways I can relate in indirect fashion, I should say, because I think more of what I personally feel is more how I feel rather than what's actually the reality. That's a whole other discussion. And as well, it feels as if it's kind of like there's some dropped potential, like in certain discussions, for instance, the way when you get to see Barb and Frank interact. I would have liked to have seen more of that. Yeah, because I mean, their kids are basically, best friends. So it's like that person almost kind of becomes a bit of like extended family, in that respect. So now getting to see more of that was a bit of disappointment. And as you pointed out, there's not really any talk about Carmine, and Carmine's there. So, it's like there's not there. It feels like there's some loose threads that, some rearranging could have helped give that a little screen time. But all in all, it's a stronger than it's a strong mid-tier episode, or a very strong mid-tier episode, almost into a great episode for me.
Yes. 7 for me, high mid-tier, for all the reasons you listed. The incredibly strong portrayal of the girl's sisterhood. Pat Carroll just knocking it out of the park. She's a badass. She's so good. She's so good in this. All the bits of the boys just work very, very well. Even the little tiny little bits that we do get, like in the beginning, those opening credits bits. Everything that you brought up, everything works for the episode, and like you said, all it could use is some tightening at the seams, so to speak. just a little bit of tightening, and it would have been a lot better, but it's pretty good as is.
Hmm.
Pretty good.
Cool. Nice. So that kind of wrap it up. I think we've chatted quite deeply about this, a little more deeply than even I expected.
Yeah. I was going to ask, season rankings. What's your favorite episode of the whole season?
Oh, man. I'm thinking my favorite of the season. I think High Neighbor is the favorite just because it's the kind of one that, again, you could sort of, it's a great episode of a TV show for me. I like the character stuff. The lone wolf thing is still like probably one of the biggest takeaways I will take from this season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of my favorite. I'll have to figure out the ranking a little bit more. Because I was still having to kind of review and think about stuff, especially about these last few episodes, which actually I was kind of happy to see that there's a lot of like, it's a peaks and valleys situation like any show, but the peaks were a little higher than I expected in these last 5 on the 3rd disc of the DVD box for season 1.
Yeah. It's High Neighbors for me, but that's always been one of my top 10 episodes for multiple reasons. For the acting, for the writing, for what it establishes, for the dialogue, for all the little parts of it that come together, and it establishes so much. Michael and David and Harry establish like so much of the Lenny and Squiggy traits in this, and this continues on through the years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely perfect in a lot of ways. That's probably my number one. I need to actually re-rank my top 10 because I ended up liking a lot of episodes towards the end of the season more than I remembered that I liked them. Probably my top 5. So I'm going to be High Neighbors, Dog Day Blind Dates, A Nun Story, probably Mother Knows Worse, then Falter at the Altar, I think. That's probably going to be my top 5.
Nice.
I
Cool.
Okay.
Well,
That's it.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I guess, gosh, wow, we've done 15 of these now, and there's
We sure have.
so many more to go. Oh boy.
Yes, many.
And then, as to anyone wondering if I will do a top 5, I will do it on the Twitter. So by the time this episode comes up, I will have I'll have written it down. I will have it posted, and so you can check us out on Twitter at NightAftNightPC. We also are on Facebook and Tumblr, and we have our WordPress for making sure if you want to watch this, listen to this, on your preferred service for podcasts, which is Night After Night Pod. For Facebook, Tumblr, and the WordPress, and yeah, that's that's kind of the main thing. So go ahead and I guess we'll figure something out, a way to get that information out. Maybe we'll cover it maybe in S1E15 maybe. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I feel like I mean, at least the most that I feel that I can cover. It's I don't know, that the long discussion just kind of drained me a little bit there. It's like it was. In the feelings,
the emotions, the Mariah Carey emotions.
Do you want to give a little tease, Lisa, of what the audience and myself can expect in season 2?
In season 2, Laverne and Shirley becomes the second most popular program in America.
Wow!
It becomes one of the biggest sitcoms in ABC history, one of the biggest sitcoms airing on American television in that time period. Season 2 will give us the introduction of Edna Babish, the girl's new landlady, played by the inimitable Betty Garrett. We get Rosie Greenbaum, played by the lovely Carol Ida White. And we get a lot of classic episodes, including Look Before You Leap, which is my absolute favorite episode of the entire series. And you're in for a lot of treats coming up. First episode out of the gate is called Drive, She Said, and I have one sentence that can describe it. Shirley Feeney stuffed stocks in her bra.
Okay, sorry, this is an audio show. I need to describe that I'm blinking. Blink, 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 blink. Okay.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that that enticing teaser, a trailer of coming attractions for next time on Night After Night Pod. And that's great. Well, you know, everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us for these episodes. Hope you've enjoyed the show, because we've certainly enjoyed making it. And it's been a wonderful time. It's been a wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you again so much for pulling me into this. This has been a very interesting adventure, and one that I've greatly enjoyed.
Me too. One of the best times of my life. One of the best few month, month and a half we've been doing this now.
Yeah, that's right.
Feels like
that's right. And I guess, I don't know if this is, you know, pulling the curtain back a little too far, but yeah, we do have a tendency to review these episodes and then watch through and then do the episodes kind of in chunks, so that we're not having to stress ourselves out, you know, week to week.
Yes.
But it helps.
It helps to have them fresh in your brain when you're reading. When you're reading.
Mm-hmm.
It helps to have them fresh in your brain when you're talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
You're writing a little paragraph about what it was about as well, which is what I do in my head.
Oh yeah. No, it's good. It gets us intimate with the work, I think, in that respect, which is cool, because I have to say, you know, now having gone through a full season, I never expected to think so deeply on an American sitcom, or a sitcom of any type, especially one from the mid-70s.
Yeah, people think this show is so broad, and they think that it is so, well, how would I put it? They think it's really stupid. They think the show is stupid. And it's
simple,
not.
Simple, yeah.
It's not that simple, it's not that stupid.
Yeah.
And it's just not. So, this is our little way of contributing to the turning of the tide of public opinion. Come on. Reanalyze this stuff, guys. Get that analysis in. Think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. And hey, but make sure, as one more thing I forgot to mention, is that if you have questions, comments, or thoughts, or any other meta you'd like to discuss with us, social media is one way to find us. If you like to be a little more direct, or you're kind of old school with the email, we also can be reached at nightafterNightPod@gmail.com for comments and potentially requests if there's certain bits of commentary you'd like us to do on a certain topic.
Yes. We're everywhere. We're all over the place at nightafternight.pc on Twitter, and Night After Night Pod on literally every social media you could think of. Otherwise.
Yeah.
And you can find us on Patreon.
Yes.
We're going to be doing some rewards. Come. If you give us some money, we'll give you something back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really all I gotta say. That's all we got going on so far. We're available on YouTube, obviously, under Night After Night Pod.
Yep.
Come join us.
Cool. I guess that's kind of it, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Lisa, and thank you again, everyone out there.
On to the next season.
Until next time.
Next time, Gadget. Next time.